Terrorism is not new. It didn't begin with 9/11. The media has been framing the narrative for a very long time, from the American Revolution to the American Civil War and on into the modern age. Terrorism has hundreds, if not thousands, of definitions, so we can say it is difficult to define. The common thread, however, that going through the majority of definitions are: it's an act of violence, it is motivated by secular or religious ideological reasons, the physical target does not have to be the intended target of the message, and the message is always intended for a larger audience. Hi, I'm Scott Whippo, and I'm going to take a few minutes to discuss mediated terrorism. So the question is, if we can't define terrorism, how do we understand it? The question is not what is terrorism, but how do we understand terrorism today based on the media's interpretation of events and the speed at which it's reported. How we understand terrorism is the nexus of the issue. What is the platform for terrorism and how does it affect the understanding? In 1972, there were no overhead platforms to carry the terrorist crisis in a speedy fashion across countries and continents. Routing and rerouting of video feeds was required, and in some instances, people waited days to see the terrorist attack on the Olympic Village in Germany. In the 1980s, I worked counterterrorism, and we were always a week ahead of the news. Today, the agencies watch the television and the internet for breaking news. In the 1990s, there was a transition in the media from reporting the news to making the news. This was due to the need for filling a 24-hour news cycle. In the early 2000s, a quicker media meant that the information was being passed faster but less accurately due to the inability to check out facts before going to press or TV. As the speed of information changed, terrorists became more adept at controlling the message. In NACO's book, Mass-Mediated Terrorism, Mainstream and Digital Media in Terrorism and Counterterrorism, she states that information is based on a triangle with the media at the pinnacle and the public and government occupying the two supporting corners of that triangle. NACO's points out that terrorists make their entry into this forum triangle through the media. This allows the terrorists the ability to communicate and place pressure on the government through the public angle. NACO's also states that there are 4 objectives that the terrorists desire to attain: public attention, recognition of grievances and demands, respect and sympathy, and legitimacy. So how do terrorists gain these objectives? As Margaret Thatcher once stated, publicity is the oxygen of terrorism. Terrorists live amongst us and are thus aware of the competition between media outlets and use this to their advantage. There's also a 24-hour news cycle which media outlets must fill with information regardless of its accuracy. Terrorists are also tech-savvy and know how to use the internet. They can and do use all of these means to gain leverage and publicity. In gaining respect and sympathy, they frame a moral equivalency that the audience will accept. This will create a feeling that the terrorist is just like us and needs and deserves the respect they ask for. Creating large terrorist incidents that hold the media's attention for a long period of time gains them respect within their own communities. How do they gain legitimacy? It is through this coverage that terrorists see their gain to legitimacy. Responses from world leaders in the news or face-to-face: Yasser Arafat of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, was once considered a terrorist, and yet by 1994 had been presented with the Nobel Peace Prize and was greeted by world leaders. Another way to gain legitimacy is to claim attacks they had no part of in order to increase their visibility and legitimacy within their own circles. They realize it's important to become a media item so that their views and issues will be discussed in the public domain on a constant basis. Another method is through interviews with various media outlets, which will over time lead to a legitimacy in the eyes of the public. It must be remembered that the terrorists have a symbiotic relationship with the media. You send my message and I will increase your viewership. A new area of media that was not so well developed in 9/11 is the internet. NACO states that the internet allows the terrorists global accessibility and an inexpensive method which is mostly unregulated. They also have the ability to exploit the World Wide Web in a number of ways. Mining allows them to look for targets, site maps, weapons construction and use, as well as surveillance and counter-surveillance methods. They can plan major operations such as they did with 9/11. They can glorify attackers and radicalize and recruit individuals, and also use it for psychological operations. These operations each have their own methods and may have different methods and contexts in which it's delivered, but the aim of the different methods is the same: to influence the audience. They also use the internet to undermine their competition, and finally use the internet and other media to raise funds. Terrorism isn't going away anytime soon. The question remains, how will we view it and include it in our awareness without giving it a platform for propaganda? Thanks for watching.